morning. Welcome to Between Two Flamingos. My name is Brian Ridenauer. I'm the student pastor at North Nixa Baptist Church, and
I'm Travis Edwards, the pastor here at North Nixa Baptist Church. Brian, you look good and refreshed.
had a pretty good week of vacation. It was fun to be away. We didn't go anywhere far. We spent a few days down at Branson, did some of the family fun stuff, and it was good.
I love the tintype picture that your family
That was
made.
fun.
That was pretty cool.
I highly recommend Groupon. Go to Groupon, type in Branson, and there are several really good deals. However, we did learn something. We had some folks send us a message saying it was Area Appreciation Night for the Hamner Variety Show. And prior to that, we'd gotten onto Groupon. And we called the box office first. They gave us their best deal. For our family, it was $135. We had 8 in the family. So we called, went to Groupon. They had $80 for us to get in. We thought, okay, that's a much better deal than $135. And then we find out it's Area Appreciation, which was $5 a person, which is 12 and under free. So our family got in for $20.
Wow.
To Hamner. So that was a good show. Did some go-karting and bumper boats and bumper cars and mini golf and went down to the lake, and it was fun.
Cool. Now the tintype, is that the one down at the landing?
No, this was just off of 76 going west. Park Hills Mall.
Okay.
And $10 for an 8x10.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, you all look really good.
Thank you.
Juliana's expression
Her
was
smirk.
priceless. She's
Holding
holding the
the
bag
money.
of money and,
Yes.
and smirking. I love that.
That was fun.
So
It
it's good to
was-
have you back.
Thank you.
But I know it's good. It's good to get away.
It is
and
good.
spend time with your family and get refreshed. But we're glad to be back. Glad to be back with everybody on Between Two Flamingos.
Yes, and I'm sure you notice that we're sporting new apparel.
Yes, we are.
So tell us about our new apparel.
Well, there's not a whole lot to tell. I got the shirts at Walmart, and then there's a place in Battlefield, a shout out to Designer Threads. They actually will do this for like $5 a shirt if you take it to them. And so I needed some North Nixa apparel, and so here we are. And Brian decided he would wear pink.
He did. He brought me a pink and a blue today, and I questioned, should we be Twinkies? But he said, hey, Between Two Flamingos, and he's exactly right. So we're Twinkies.
We are Twinkies.
But anyway, I think we should get to our guest.
We should get to our guest.
We have a very, very special guest today, and I will let you once again do the intro.
I appreciate that. So today we are blessed to have Dr. John Marshall, who was the longtime pastor of Second Baptist Church in Springfield, Missouri. He is here with us today. He is also a rising cooking show host. It is unbelievable what is going on in his life right now as it relates to cooking. And so we're going to find out a little bit more about that. So please welcome Dr. John Marshall.
Come on in.
Thank you, man. It's good to be with you. If I had one of those, it would be trip keys.
Trip keys. That's true.
It's good to be in the pact.
Yes.
Yeah.
I appreciate you using the proper
Well,
term.
I have to admit, I thought that a flamingo would be a flock, but you guys have corrected me.
Family
So I'm
group
glad I didn't say.
is a pat.
I'm glad I didn't get on here and say, glad to be in the flock.
Yeah.
That would put me in a bed. But I guarantee you more people thought I was right than if I said that.
That's not true.
Are you going to Google it later to see if we are accurate?
You know what? I believe you. I really do. Men who have researched flamingos are men to be respected.
And wear pink shirts.
Exactly. That puts you in a category to yourself.
That's true.
Yeah,
I've been told that often.
Right,
actually,
yeah.
So.
Yeah, I love your shirt. That's a pretty shirt.
Thank you.
Really
Put my
stands out.
blue jeans on this morning, and it matches. And so I thought, well, it'll stand out on the camera. So
It
let's
will.
just put it on.
It will.
And Dr. John filled in here at North Nixa a few weeks ago.
Yes, I did.
Really appreciated the message that he shared. Everybody was excited to have
It was,
you here.
it was a great day.
And I appreciate the fact you went casual. Thank you very much
Yeah.
for doing that. That's awesome. That helps me
Yeah.
out.
If I'd have had a bright green suit, I'd have worn it. And you're on.
Thank you.
Goodness, man, you wear some outfits that I look at and I think, holy cow. I always thought I was brave. I thought I was kind of on the edge a little bit. Oh no, oh no, you're off the edge. You're down the cataclysm.
So you saw his flamingo suit.
Yes, I did. But I think the most outstanding one was the green that you wore. Well, I don't know when you wore it.
A couple weeks ago.
Yeah, yeah.
Looks like I played in the Masters.
I looked at that and I thought, no, it looked like you played in the swamp. That's not the Masters, man. That's past that. I just found, man, and then of course you tried to teach me how to do the bow tie.
I did.
From neckties, and I tried it. I really did. I went to that video on YouTube. I actually tried it, but the bow tie was this big.
They are pretty.
It looked like Bozo the Clown. I felt so stupid. I got it up like that and I looked up and said, Ruthie just went, no, not going to happen. So, but you were one of the first real bow tie wearers. I remember, it was a big deal to you. And,
I love wearing
bow
bow tie Thursday.
They're pretty nice, pretty good.
Yeah. Well, he's also worn a Pac-Man suit.
I have a
here.
Pac-Man suit.
No, I'm not seeing that, man.
Well, keep watching and you'll see it again.
Okay.
And you gave away my secret about my clock
What about your clock?
up there in the pulpit.
Yeah. Listen, man, and it was off.
Was it?
It was not accurate. I told the people, I said, listen, this isn't, it's not right. I just want you to know
And
that.
the angle, you said.
Oh, it's terrible. It was worthless, which makes it perfect for a preacher.
That's
You can't
right.
see it anyway. Who cares?
And they've got a clock way back there.
Well, that's hard to see though. That's kind of a pitiful little clock back there in the back. Right now I'm looking at it. That's pretty tough. That at Fort Smith they had one. Oh, it's huge. I mean, they were sending a signal. They were sending a message.
Right
Man.
there in the center.
Oh yeah, right in the center. Yeah, and so I thought, okay, I've got that message. It's loud and clear. But this one is kind of a little pitiful one.
It really is. It's hard to find little clocks like that
It
anymore.
is. It is. It is. Yeah. Now, they're going to their watches, we're going to our phones. It's just hard to find that type of
Like a little
measuring
traveling
piece.
alarm. Yeah, alarm clock.
Right.
Right. That's like a Goodwill find.
It really
Garage
is.
sale.
So keep your eyes open.
That is so true. That is so true.
Yeah, because I need a better one apparently.
Yeah.
They would say for sure.
How long-
He needs a better one.
How long do you preach?
Typically 30, 35 minutes.
Yeah, that's about right. I for 20 years had to preach 25 because it was on the television ministry. I mean, I had to nail it, and I could do it 25, 26 minutes. But as now that I'm no longer under that restraint, I do half an hour, 35 minutes, which for me is kind of long, but I still think that's the acceptable
Right.
length. Some of these guys, man, they're pushing 45, 50, 55 minutes, and most guys are not good enough preachers to preach that long.
Right.
They're really not.
They need to break it up.
You gotta, when you preach that long, you gotta really be able to rivet people to their seats. And most guys can't. So about a half an hour is about right.
And the older I get, I've learned, God willing, I'm going to be back next week. So
True,
It's better
man.
to
Man,
shorten it, break it up,
Right.
rather than try to cram it all in. Because you're doing your research, you get all this great truth, and you want to share it, but you don't want to overwhelm.
that's
the
exactly
people.
right. There used to be a guy, Joplin, who would preach 12 minutes.
Is that
Wow.
right?
Every time he preached, yeah. He was a pastor for many years. I'm sure they
Was that the
loved
first
him.
mega church?
No. Should have been. But they said it didn't matter whether it was a speaking engagement, a baccalaureate, a wedding, a funeral, anything. He never went over 12 minutes. And I think,
I'm just
whoa.
getting started.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Just got. You just got to pass them admiring your suits. Well, people aren't hearing what you say for about 5 minutes.
So I just need to stand up there for the first 5 minutes.
Exactly. You got it, man.
That have to get like a little walkway out here. Is what you're saying?
No, you don't have to have walkway, man. you are on display. That's all you need. You're on
Oh. So tell us about your retirement. Are you enjoying it?
Yes, I am. I retired the first day I could. I'm a heart patient, had 2 heart attacks and a stroke. And we had decided a few months before that my wife, my kids, grandkids, were all here in Springfield together. And so I just need to go ahead and make the call. So we made the call to go ahead and retire. And we did, the first day that we could. And it's been 9 months now, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought I'd have trouble with it. I really did. I thought, like the rest of us, you're driven, that's what you do. But not one minute and just I've stayed busy. I'm doing stuff, and that has helped, and I'm enjoying what I'm doing.
And you would like to do some interim work.
Absolutely. I was an interim at Riverview Baptist up at Osage Beach. Oh my, we loved that. And yes, we'd like to do that. Southwest Missouri, though, has a blessing and a curse. And that blessing curse is a glut of preachers, because this is a retirement mecca. And so as the boomers, my generation and older, are retiring, this place is filling up with preachers. And so churches have lots of choices. And so a church has to make a decision. Do they want to call a man who's 70 years old, has had 40 years of experience, knows how to visit hospitals, do weddings, funerals, and then pay him $300 a week? Or do you call a guy who's 30, has a wife and 3 kids, and you have to pay medical insurance? The medical insurance alone
Outrageous.
would be more than the full salary of a retired guy. And so that's the dilemma in Southwest Missouri. Churches, it's easy for churches to get men to fill the pulpits, be interims, even pastors. And so I've not had a lot of opportunities, but I am staying busy doing revival, Bible conferences, and things like that. But it's busy enough. But also I'm free to go to St. Louis every week or two to see my dad. He's 91 now, has dementia pretty bad. So I'm doing okay. It's enough. I would like for it to be more what preacher doesn't want to preach all the time. But I'm okay so far.
Good. So, and you were pastor 22 years?
22
Second.
years, yeah, and I'm 66, 1/3 of my life. I was that second, and it was a great run. Boy, it was wonderful. It was just an event in the power and sovereignty of God. All you can do is to say the Lord did this. That's all there is to it.
And how old were you when you started in the ministry?
I was 15.
15?
Yes, my first sermon at age 15 was on the difference between love and lust.
I love this line.
Yeah.
Go ahead and share it.
I didn't know much about love, but man, I had lust. And my second sermon at age 15, how to raise godly children. I used to tell people the second, and by the way, it was a good sermon. I told how my parents raised us. So basically, a pretty good sermon. I used to tell people the second they should have hired me when I knew everything. they got me on the back end when I had more questions than I had answers. But yeah, it was like so I've been preaching since I was 15. So 51 years in the ministry. It's all I've ever known, really.
Praise the Lord for that.
Yeah, it's been good.
Now, something that I know that you would not bring up, but I'm going to bring this up because I just think it's just outstanding. Received your doctorate at the age of 23?
23.
Youngest?
Youngest ever from Southern Baptist Institution. Yeah.
I'm like, I was thinking about that this morning, like graduated from college at like 22, and
Yeah.
here you already have your doctorate at 23. I'm just like, that is amazing.
Yeah, well, what happened was, I started preaching, as I said, 15. I was in the 9th grade. Well, I wasn't a great student. I was an okay student, but I wasn't a great student. And I didn't particularly like school. Well, back then, you just automatically go to seminary. And so I just told the Lord, I said, you know, Lord, I got a long way to go if I'm going to be in the ministry and do what I want to do. And I just asked him if he would help me like school. And he did. It's one of the great miracles of my life. And so what happened was my sophomore year of high school, I started going to school year round. I would go summer school, Christmas center term, anytime a class was offered. So I went through high school in 3 years, college in 3 years, and got a doctorate in 3 years.
Wow.
So that's how I did it. You just never stopped. After I got my master's, I said to Ruthie, we were both tired, I said, should we wait? And she said, honey, if we stop, we'll never come back. And so we stayed at it, and lo and behold, did the right thing. Got it done, got it behind us. Ruthie was 7 months pregnant with our second child when I got the doctorate. And so it worked out okay. And yes, I was 23 years old. It's so long ago, now 43 years ago, it's almost not lost, but it never comes up. I don't think about it.
Right.
It never comes up. And also, an interesting thing about that night I got my doctorate, when I put the hood over my head, Dr. Landon Level did that. When he put it over my head, I made a promise to God I've kept. for 43 years. I promised God I would never take another test as long as I live. And I've kept that promise. Never. No, not another school class, nothing. Nothing. So I have considered auditing some classes at MSU because at my age you can do that free, but I'm not, no more tests. And I kept my promise. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
So you mentioned Miss Ruthie.
Yeah.
We all know that for someone to be successful
yeah.
in ministry, it
Yeah.
takes a great spouse, someone who supports you. Would you like to just give a
Yeah,
shout out to
you know,
Miss Ruthie?
okay, every good man I ever knew married up, and you guys are no exception to the rule. Okay, and I'm certainly not an exception to the rule. The ministry is grueling.
Mhm.
It is, Peter Drucker, the great writer of management and leadership, said that only being president of the United States or the head of a hospital is harder than being a pastor. And he said the reason for that is because we have to deal with volunteers. Drucker was always saying, don't, just because the guy's really successful in the business world, don't automatically put him on your staff when he retires. He didn't have a clue what it means to enlist volunteers. And so he always said that a pastor, it's almost an impossible role. Your life is dependent on being successful. You lose your job. You got to do the job, but you are totally dependent on volunteers. So, this pressure of the pastorate will eat your family up. It'll eat you alive. Your children, your home life, your marriage, and as a result, you have a lot of preachers to try to escape that stress. They'll have affairs,
Right.
and often a man will have an affair. 3 months later, he's back with his wife and he's happily married. You know, what happened? Well, without realizing it was a way of getting out of the ministry. You know, they would never know that. You know, a psychologist can explain that. I can't. But they get out of the ministry, and once the pressure's off, they go back to each other, and as happily married as they can be. So the ministry has these tremendous pressures attached to it. Well, so if you're going to do well in ministry, you have to marry a minister.
Right.
You have to marry somebody who has almost the same call as you do. Not in all the details, but who has the call of God on her life to share the ups and downs, to walk with you through the valleys, celebrate the victories. It's pretty difficult. I'll give you a good example. When we retired from second, for me it was easier than her because I got to lay down a lot of administrative duties.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I got to walk away from those grueling hours, you know, the work we put in. I had 26 ministers reporting to me at second. You're talking about pressure.
Yeah.
And and I had the most wonderful staff in the history of the world. But everything that went wrong in one of their ministries was also my problem, you know, because they don't want to do anything that would displease me. So everything going to church comes back to you in one way or another. And as Terry Truman said, the buck stops here, it really does. Well, so when I retired, I got to put that down. For Ruthie, it was only relationships. Oh my goodness. For me, at least I got the relief of the laying the burden of the work down. But for Ruthie, it was a leaving behind of relationships. And it's really been harder for Ruthie than for me. So even at that point, even at the end of the public ministry, you have to have somebody whose heart is with you and walks with you and says, yes, it's time to let it go. So yes. You better marry up if you're going to be in the ministry.
You know, talking about the struggles of the pastorate ministry, I saw yesterday that there was a pastor in California, mega church, young man who ended his life.
Yeah, I saw that on Facebook as a big article.
Just tragic guy. He struggled with anxiety, depression.
Yes.
Tom Rayner wrote a great blog post on, you know, why pastors struggle with anxiety and depression. We see that, don't we, in the ministry among us. And it's one of those things that, unfortunately, ministers don't like to talk about because of the perception. Can you speak to that a little bit?
One of the problems we have is, as pastors, we somehow live under the myth that to become a pastor fixes all your mental problems. if you're the son of an alcoholic, you need to go get fixed. Okay? You get your son, you become, you get saved. God calls you to preach. Well, guess what? You still got all that baggage. You struggle with depression. I battled depression for 35 years. I understand. I know about depression. Somehow you think when God calls you to preach, all your mental troubles are left behind. The same is true of your marriage. If you think going to ministry is going to help your marriage, you've got another thing coming. That's not true. So one of the things I wish I could teach ministers, pastors, and even church people is they would understand that their pastor brings baggage, brings a past. One of the greatest things a church would do would be to just help a pastor, I'm just picking one out there, but like a son of alcoholic parents, if there'd be somebody who would say, you ever thought about going to get some counseling or something? Our church will take care of this. Or if a pastor and his wife have marriage trouble, the church should immediately try to get them help, because the ministry just makes it worse. So the ministry does play a part. Therefore, there does need to be help. But I think the main problem is we come into the pastorate, we bring our baggage with us, and somehow we think because we are pastors, we're fixed, and we're not fixed. And so, yeah, it haunts us. And yes, I saw the picture of that pastor's little family. Oh my gosh. You think, oh, this is just, you can't even believe it. But yeah, I've been there in depression, never like that, of course. But yeah, it's heartbreaking, and it happens more than we'd like to admit.
What was the biggest thing that helped you as you struggled with depression? And was it hard for you early on to let it be known that you struggled with that? Was there something that kind of held that back, or were you always able to kind of openly share that?
All right. You have clinical depression only if you cannot get dressed to go to work. That's sort of the defining thing. I never had it that bad. And I actually thought that my depression was a good thing, that I was John the Baptist, I was Jeremiah the prophet, I was standing against sin. I actually thought that this was a part of my constitution. Now, my dad, for all my life, had a perpetual smile. He cannot frown. It's impossible. He's got this smile all the time. He's got this all the time. Well, I have a scowl. I have a natural, serious look. And my dad would say to me, "You are so blessed. That makes a good preacher to have a scowl." He would say that to me. He'd say he felt he was handicapped because he had a smile. He'd say, "But John, you've got that look." So I actually thought that it was a part of my being. And one of my biggest regrets, a lot of my kids grew up with a depressed dad. My wife had to deal with my depression. And I was at a pastor's conference, just a Monday morning preacher's meeting, maybe 20 or 30 guys. The guy stood up and shared his testimony, how he'd overcome depression. And it was the first time, it was Wayne Kroll was his name, great leader of the Missouri Baptist Children's Home. But Wayne said he'd overcome depression, and I can still remember thinking, overcame depression, what does that mean? I never even thought about that. So I contacted him, and we went out to eat, and he told me about a book, Happiness is a Choice, by the psychologist Minard and Meyer. And I read the book. My wife read it with me. He told us for both of us to read it. We went through it together, so she became my life coach. And almost no one overcomes depression alone. I mean, you can do it, but almost never. So we went through the book together. She became my life coach, and she would start seeing the signals that as you read the book, it tells you the signals to look for. But the greatest part of the book is, I think it's either the last chapter or next to the last chapter, that says you can get well. And that was such a great revelation to me. So Ruthie and I walked through it. We made it, and God gave us victory. I was, like I said, 35 years old when I was going through that. And the Lord gave me great victory, and I still have to be careful. It's like an alcoholic with alcohol. I can slip easily back into that, want to be alone, hide in a room somewhere, turn the lights out, I don't want to hear anything. But Ruthie learned 30 years ago, what to do, what to say, how to draw me out. And yeah, but if you don't get help, you will sink. You'll continue to sink deeper and deeper and deeper. So I'm grateful that the Lord used Wayne Kroll and my wife to help me overcome that. Yeah, it's a great thing. It's interesting. I have almost, I'm sure there have been exceptions, but almost never in a sermon do I mention about my struggle against depression, but that somebody contacts me. It says I struggle with depression.
Yeah.
So I've had a ministry through the years, not being a counselor. I'm not a professional counselor.
Right.
Preachers are not professional
Right.
counselors, and they need to know that, and people
Yeah.
need to know that. But we can comfort, and we can direct. And so people come to me, and I've got my little spiel. I tell them about my depression and my battle with it, how God gave me victory. But yet I'm always very careful. But then I recommend, they get people to recommend the book. Happiness is a Choice, obviously, always. In fact, I kept those for years, good stock of them. I'd give those away. So it's been a great help to people. And I think the Lord has used me to help people just because I've been open
Right.
about it.
Well, on a lighter note,
Yes, sir. Let's get off of that, man. I'm starting to get depressed right now.
We don't want that to happen.
Let's move on. Yeah.
so what are some of the retirement fun things that you're doing now?
I am reading a biography of every president. And I mean significant biographies. I'm not talking about children's books.
Right.
I'm really reading significant biographies. In fact, there's a website, Best Biographies of Presidents. And I've been going to that website, getting the names of books, finding them on Amazon. That's one of the things I've done since I retired. I got on Amazon. I never did that before. So that's been big to be able to
So are
buy
you
stuff.
a prime? Are you
I am not primed yet.
yet?
Do you think I should?
Yes.
Probably so. If you're gonna spend much money on there, it'd be worth it.
2-day free shipping on anything. Yeah, it's worth it. We homeschool. And so my wife is constantly buying things, and through Amazon, we take advantage of Prime all the time.
It's interesting. But so I use Amazon to order stuff and the books, and I read them, and I'm up to Zachary Taylor now. I believe he's the 12th president. I'm learning so much. And of course, I have only one interest, that's the spiritual.
Right.
God's call in my life. If I didn't preach again until I died, God's call is on my life for the spiritual. So when I read a book, I only mark religious stuff. Like, for instance, I just use Zachary Taylor. I'm only 10 pages into the book. I just got started. Zachary Taylor's wife was extremely religious, but she could never convince him to be. Well, I marked that in my book. And someday I'll go back. I'm going to try to analyze some of the guys. The guy that comes up all the time is Henry Clay, the congressman. He's omnipresent. So I read a biography of him. And he led a reckless life. He was a gambler. He led a pretty tough life. Till he lost most of his children. By the time he finally lost, I think, 7 of his 11 kids, something like that, he turned to the Lord. And so I marked that, and that's interesting to know. He was never president, but he was the number one influence on Abraham Lincoln. So he almost was president, because Lincoln said every idea he ever had he got from Clay. So just stuff like that. The greatest burden I have in reading it, I've always known about, slavery and terrible, obviously. But I haven't never read 10 or 11 books in a row where slavery was the dominant thing. We truly did have a slaveocracy. Slavery was the king. You couldn't do anything in this country without measuring how it went up against slavery. And that's really been a struggle for me, because some of these guys, they were Christians, they loved the Lord, they loved the Bible, and yet you think, how is that possible? And it forces me to look inside myself and ask, what am I wrong about?
Right.
The church has always been wrong about something. Always. There's never been an exception to this in history. And so when I read stuff like that, rather than me lording it over them and saying, well, I'm a better person than they were, had I lived then, I'd have been just like them. We're not better than they were. We share the common law of humanity. So as I read it, I try to ask myself, John, what are you learning here? what could you possibly be wrong about? What in your life are your grandkids going to look back and say, I can't believe my grandpa believed that? So it's been a great study. So I'm reading the Presidents, but I'm reading it for the spiritual application because that's who I am. That's my life, and that's what I do. But that's been a lot of fun. I do like doing that.
I know you've done a lot of research in the topic of religion and the Civil War.
Yes.
So share a couple of things or a few things about that you found interesting.
The religion and Civil War, Lincoln's second inaugural was the greatest sermon ever preached in U.S. history. In fact, later that day, he saw a man and he asked him how he liked the address. The guy said it was great. And he said it was a sermon. It was a message that he had preached that. He used 4 scripture verses that basically which he expounded. And that is the religious history of the Civil War. If you want to understand the religious history of the war, you go to the second inaugural, which is carved on the wall of the Lincoln Memorial. It's really impressive. The Gettysburg Address, and then the second inaugural. And you read that, and you learn they prayed to the same God, read the same Bible, and see, he was coming to grips with the same thing. You know, there we heard we were all religious people. We claimed to be Christians, and yet we have this worst institution in the history of the world. The only time in the history of the world where slavery was based on color of the skin. Always before it was a conquered people, you know. But you can see why a conquered people, how they would amalgamate. They would men are marry slaves because you all kind of looked alike.
Right.
But what made American slavery so much worse was that it was identified by the color of skin. And once you define it that way, then you have the wall.
Right.
And we're still, to this day, we're still struggling with the after effects of that issue. The Bible, everybody got Bibles. It was the only thing in Lincoln allowed an embargo to be lifted. He let the Bibles be taken into the South. He felt like a soldier, whichever side, should have a Bible. So they gave Bibles up. So here's everybody reading the same Bible, as he said. And they're trying to find their way. What caused the Civil War? You brought it up, so I'm going to deal with it. When you read secular books, and when you were in high school, we learned about what was called manifest destiny.
Right.
Remember? Was the belief, everybody, Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Madison, all the early presidents, all of them, everybody in the country believed in manifest destiny. That it was God's will for America to take over the continent, Atlantic to Pacific, and bring freedom, and this was God's will. Well, that is true, but you know what? Manifest destiny was the secular offspring of postmillennialism, which nobody ever talks about. Now, most Baptists are premillennialists. They believe that Jesus is going to come, there's going to be a millennial reign.
Right.
But what drove the missions, the modern missions, William Carey, Adoniram Judson, Hudson Taylor, all those guys were postmillennialists. And postmillennium believes that the missionaries are going to go make the world better. When the world was finally good enough, Jesus would come back. All right, so you had manifest destiny in the secular world. We're here to make the world better. We're going to do better. We're going to make this thing happen. But the Christians are right in the thick of it because they're driven by postmillennialism. And so, excuse me, so the abolitionists, they're driven by a religious thing to make the world better. So we're all agreeing we are here to make the world better. And so the result is you had the irresistible force, which is postmillennialism and manifest destiny, and slavery. Mm-hmm. And those two, and as the old saying used to be, I'm a mathematician by training, my degree is in math. And when I was in school, we were taught that when the irresistible force meets the immovable object, the irresistible force becomes the immovable object, and the immovable object becomes the irresistible force. But now the physics people tell us that's not true. They now say when the irresistible force meets the immovable object, they're both destroyed. And that's exactly what happened when the irresistible force of manifest destiny, postmillennialism, when it hit that slave holding, that immovable object, it blew up. We had the war. It's the only thing they could have. Now the result, the most important part about religion in the Civil War, and I'll bring this out in my lecture. I have a 1-hour lecture I do at clubs around, but the main result was Christians began to look to the government to solve moral problems. And we're 150, 60 years later now, and we're still doing that. I mean, how did we cure slavery? We went to war. The government did something about it. So ever since, Christians have had this temptation, whatever the issue is, whatever the social issue is, whatever the church is making a big deal of, at any given moment, they're saying, well, the government needs to enforce this. The government needs to do this. So that has been the biggest side effect of religion in the Civil War, has been how it still influences our thinking. I think we're probably, if we're not the only nation in the world, we're close to it, that the Christians actually believe the government should enforce our morals. I remember I was on a mission trip in Scotland. We started a church over there, the second did, and we were told that they're more conservative than we are. And you'd have to be to be a Baptist in Scotland. I mean, it's Western culture. I mean, Western Europe is about as dead as any place in the world spiritually. And so you got to be a firm believer. You got to be a true believer. And they said, don't bring up politics ever. Oh, that's interesting. Do not. So I did not bring up politics, but I would ask them what they believe. I did not tell them what I believe, but I would ask them, what do you think? And I'll tell you what, when you open the door, get ready, you're about to get clobbered. They say to us, these are people more conservative than I was. They say, what in the world are you thinking? Deciding how to vote on a politician based on his morals, his religious belief. He said, where's that coming from? They were just, I'm thinking, wow. And at the same time, a president was in the White House that conservative Christians were always angry at, and they loved him. They thought he was great because he had helped solve the Ireland problem.
Yeah.
And so they thought, hey, you got you a great leader here, but what's wrong with you conservative Christians? You cannot see that it's possible to be a great leader, but to be totally immoral. And of course, their example is Solomon. Solomon's the greatest king Israel ever had. He asked for wisdom, and so he was the greatest administrator, I guess, that Israel ever had. But he had 1,000 women, as the kid said. He had 700 wives and 300 cucumber vines. But anyway, you think when you really think about that, you have to look back and say, well, that's pretty immoral. That's pretty godless. But yet somehow he was able to do a great work publicly. And so it was interesting to talk to Christians more conservative than I am and get the different perspective, especially in light of my study of how religion in the Civil War continues to affect our way of thinking.
And as you're talking about that, I'm thinking about today and how, the dialogue today is how could anybody, and I'm not trying to go into the weeds of politics, but just it was interesting to me because there's a lot of people who would say, how could anybody, any Christian, support our current president because of, the way that he's lived his life? The people in Scotland might say, okay, he's a good leader. They're not looking at his moral values. They're looking at is he a good leader? So it's kind of interesting where we're at today, because I know a lot of criticism has gone toward any Christian who has supported the current president. How could you ever support him? But they would say, hey, that's what I'm hearing. You're not basing it just on moral values.
The Scots would say, you judge a man by his what he does administratively in government, in his political life, and you don't make decisions based on his religious or moral values. That would be what they would say. Now, we have a different system.
Right.
We have a different history. It's nothing I've learned. Things don't happen in a vacuum. America's not going to become Scotland. Scotland's not going to become America. The footprint of Christianity, as we understand it, is huge in the United States. I mean, we think, we're going the way of the albatross. Don't kid yourself, man. We're still 10 times more influential than any other religion. And I mean, just look at us. We have a weekend. Why do we have a weekend? Because of Christianity and the Sabbath day. That's why. You just look at marriage. Why is it still so important? It's the footprint of Christianity. The morals, of a leader do matter in our country. Why? Because that's the footprint of the Christianity as we understand it.
Right.
So whether you're a Christian or not, you have to understand and admit that our system of understanding church and state is different from Scotland, England, everybody else, and therefore we do have this struggle of trying to understand what is our, how do we mix the two? So that's it. But religion and civil war is a fascinating study.
We could talk
A long time about that.
Yes, we could.
couldn't
Yeah.
we?
So I know that you're also doing some cooking videos.
Oh man, world famous in Springfield.
He's a rising cooking star.
Oh yeah, a culinary expert. Yes. I was sitting at well, okay. I can't boil water. I couldn't. And I told my wife when I retired I was going to learn how to cook. Well, she said, "Okay, we'll see how that works out for you." But I did it. I did it, much to her surprise. So I decided I'm going to cook. Well, one day my grandkids are at the house. My two Ian and Lily Ruth, my daughter's two children. We have Lily Ruth, her mother's Rebecca Ruth, and then Ruth the first, my wife. Okay, so they're very gifted children. We're at the house and we're just talking about my cooking, and we decided, and they're very gifted in doing videos and stuff like that. I said, let's do a cooking video. Well, they just thought that's the greatest thing in the world. So I said, well, let's practice. Get your phones and let's talk about making tea. So I did this video about making tea. It's past 3,500 views.
Amazing.
It is. And I don't understand.
We've never received that many views between two flamingos. We're hoping that you're going to bring it up to 3,000.
Oh, I'm sure will. I'm sure will. Yeah, trust me, buddy. Yeah, I'm sure. Somehow that tea video keeps being resurrected. It keeps coming up. There must be something about the algorithm of Facebook somehow that it continues to turn it around. So it keeps coming up. And like last night, I mean, it's been, 2 weeks since I put that up? I started getting comments again last night. I thought, what is the deal? And sure enough, somehow it kicked in, it's back up. Well, so I said, let's just have fun. Grab your phones. They grab their phones. I just stand up and start talking about what I do to make tea. Done. I said, okay, that's great. Let's go to the store. We'll get chuck roast ingredients, Okay, let's go. We'll go to I get my recipe. We'll go to, and we get the meat cutter to ham it up with us, He's having fun. We're having fun.
The meat cutter, ham it up. I love that.
I'm not that good. That's great. All right. So we're having this great time. I mean, we got done. The police show up. And my wife is convinced that because we were walking around the store taking videos that somebody calls that we got some people doing some strange stuff. I don't know if that's true or not, but there were two police cars sitting right there as we came out, and as we left, they left. But anyway, so I could just see the preacher going to jail. But anyway, okay. All right. At least I was retired. So okay. So we went home, started the chuck roast. The kids went home, came back 4 hours later, did a little bit more, went home, and by about 10 or 11 o'clock that night, all of a sudden we've got one tea video, 2 cooking videos, and one's a tribute to Ruthie and me that my granddaughter did behind the scenes of us cooking, So we thought, okay, here we go. So we started putting them up on Facebook, and it has been a hoot and a half. See, I'm one of these preachers that I'm going to just fess up. My name is John, and I love Facebook. I just do. To me, it is just fun. That's all it is. It's just fun. I'm not here to try to change the world. I'm not here with some great person. I just want to have fun. Well, boy, the fun started with the videos. People started giving you their suggestions as if I would know what they're talking about. You need to do this, you need to do that. And I'm thinking, these people really think I know how to cook. And like I said, like I was telling you guys before we started, I know 5 dishes now. And so, I can cook. I can do a chuck roast. I can put pork chops in a carb. In fact, if I ever do start a TV cooking series, I'm gonna call it the Crackpots Crockpots. But anyway, so it became a phenom unto itself, and I'm trying to figure this out. And it's been. I've read the biography of Julia Childs. I read another book about Julia Childs, her correspondence with the other lady, helped her do her first cookbook. I actually watched the Food Network the other day for about I only made it 3 or 4 minutes, but I got to thinking, what am I doing? Why do I care about the Food Network? I can't cook this stuff. So it is becoming we probably won't do it anymore. Kids are in school now, they don't have time. But I do have to admit, it's been a lot of fun.
You know, I think there's a show called The Food Channel's Next Superstar or something like that. I'm
here
saying,
for you, man.
I'm thinking that maybe you
Well,
ought to apply for that.
unfortunately-
Submit your
Unfortunately, some people have said I should apply for that one. It's I Can't Cook show, the worst cook show. You know what I'm talking about? I saw a replay of it. The worst cooks. It's
Yeah, I think I've
a
seen
show,
that,
and somebody said that's what I ought to apply for. So I just that's one of the great things about doing videos. You only put your best foot forward.
Right.
They're only seeing the really good stuff, you know. Except, you know, because I didn't care, we would leave the bloopers in.
Right.
If you don't care, not caring is a great thing about something like that. Then once again, what's Facebook? It's fun.
Right.
You do something stupid, you just look at the camera, and you do something funny, and say something funny. Ruthie's behind the camera laughing so hard, and then one of the kids catches her on the video, and her laughing so hard she can't breathe. You put it in there, have some fun. So it's been a lot of fun. Yeah,
I have to say, I was concerned the other day. We were sitting eating lunch, and they had a special. We were watching the KY3 News, and they had a special that lemon prices were going to be going up
Yeah.
because of what was happening in Florida. And I said to Brian, I said, I'm concerned about Dr. John. I said, I know he loves lemons in his
I
tea.
do,
and
I do.
He's going to feel this.
I do. Do you guys cook? Do you cook?
No, I'm like TV dinners.
Yeah.
And stuff
What
like
about
that.
you? Ooh,
I grill. I like to
guys,
grill.
Guys, I am the proof that you have hope. I can do
That's-
this. I didn't start cooking until I was 66.
You should start a pastor's cooking club.
There you go.
Yeah, something like that, I guess. I just, I don't know, I still say crackpots, crockpots. It says it all. The title gives it away. But it's been a lot of fun.
That's
what it-
cool.
I wish I'd done it when I was a pastor. It's
Okay,
like some of
okay,
that
identify
some of that
the people.
silly stuff that you do. You know, I mean, you guys do some stuff pretty. Between two flamingos, you could have done it between two swans, between, you know, two gazelles.
Bibles, 2 Bibles.
Exactly.
I mean, between 2 Bibles.
So you guys know how to have fun, especially those outfits you wear. And so had I been a pastor and done it, I think it would have gone all over that congregation. So maybe you two guys, if you've never cooked, let your kid, you got a bunch of kids, let them get their phones and start taking some video, put it together, put a little music behind it, and your church will come alive. I'm serious, they really will.
I think letting people see that human side
Exactly.
of it is important.
Exactly.
Now, I gotta say, I offered to let you borrow my pink flamingo jacket. You never called me.
No, I wasn't gonna cut them, no. I'm stuttering. I
should have brought it today.
No.
I should have.
I still wouldn't have worn it. Oh, God. That's great. You know, every man has his limit. I can only go so far.
That's true.
But yeah, it's really great. But I enjoy both of your Facebook, following your Facebook, and I think we're just having fun.
Yep.
That's what we're trying to do. I'll use it to introduce the blog, you know, lead people to my blog and stuff like that. I'll use it for a great quote or something, you know, about prayer. But ultimately, the bottom line is it's fun.
Yes.
That's what I do. It's a way to socialize, fellowship, to network, and I'm enjoying that.
Well, we enjoy it, and we just appreciate you. We appreciate your friendship.
Thank you.
Appreciate your willingness to come on Between Two Flamingos and have fun. That's really what this is all about. We want to have fun, but we do want to introduce people to people that we think are making
Great.
a difference, and we think that you're making a great
Thank
difference
you.
and have and continue. And so, Brian, any closing words?
Be listening for ice cream music
Yes.
this week.
Yes, we're excited about our Awana outreach that we're going to be doing. So yeah, listen. If you live in the Nixa area, listen for the ice cream music.
What does ice cream music mean?
What we're going to do is convert our church bus into an ice cream truck
Oh,
this week,
way to go.
handing out free ice cream and invites to Awana.
And you ought to put 2 flamingos up there and open the window between the
Well, we may.
between 2
We have
flamingos
to.
and promote your
can do
program here.
But what we would love
Yes.
is if you're out in the community and you hear us coming, we'd love for you to take pictures, take video,
Share.
come up to the bus, Share those on Facebook. We want people to know that it's not just a couple of weird guys out handing out free ice cream.
Not that
but
it's
this
about
is
us. Not that it's about us. Please, don't misunderstand.
but it is
me.
a church outreach to our community, and we're excited about that.
Oh, and they forgot to tell you, tag them on everything that you put up there.
That's right.
Not that it's about us, but
That's
just,
right.
just we want you to be careful.
We want you to like it and share it. It's
We
not
do.
about us. We just
We
Isn't
do.
that baloney? It is baloney. You know, don't go into ministry if you don't like cameras, you don't like microphones, and you don't like people. Just
That's
don't,
right.
Just
That
give
is
it
true.
up. Give it
That's
up.
true.
I was telling a guy one time, one of my dear friends, a deacon, said, "How do you know if what you were doing is self-promoting or promoting the Lord? You want to be careful." He said, "Pastor," and I thought this was good counseling. He said, 51% is good enough. I thought that was good counsel. He said, "It doesn't have to be 100% for the Lord. It doesn't have to be said if I was." He said, "Just if you're leaning that way, that's enough." And that has happened through the years. You can. It is okay to have fun, to do stuff like that, as long as at the end of the day you are leaning toward the Lord, and really it is for Him, for His glory. It really is ultimately. Even though we're calling attention to ourselves, we hope that our hearts are right, and it goes unto Him.
That is a great final word.
it is.
Well, I want to thank you all for watching, and as we just talked about, we want you to like this video and share this video.
We're going to be tagging Dr. John Marshall in this.
And so all of Dr. John Marshall's friends, we
That's
would
right.
love for
Like
you
and
to
share.
like
That's
and
right.
share. And
That's great.
so
Okay.
anyway, once again, thank you for watching, and we hope that you'll tune in next time for Between Two Flamingos.
Oh, flamingos, sorry about that.